I've been testing full self-driving for a little over 2 years now, and I've watched it make huge improvements with each new version and slowly and steadily master the roads around my area. The one thing I haven't tried in all these years is a road trip. I don't mean a few hours away test. I mean a full-on 1,200-mile trip from my home just south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, all the way down south to the sunny shores of South Beach, Miami. This is a trip I've made annually since I was born, starting with my grandparents taking me down to Miami Beach every year until I was old enough to drive, at which point I started driving them down. Now, all these years later, I have 2 children of my own, one who is 3 years old and is as excited as can be for a fun vacation with mom and dad, while the other has decided to retire at the magical age of 18, where a 1,200-mile road trip with mom and dad sounds about as fun as, well, a 1,200-mile road trip with mom and dad. But for this massive road trip, we're making a strategic swap. Normally, you see me doing my FSD tests in my Model S, but we're taking my wife's hardware for Model X instead. In any other type of vehicle, you'll probably spend the first few minutes fiddling with the seat, adjusting the mirrors, trying to get the temperature just right. And if you switch drivers to rest during the trip, you'll both have to do the adjustments all over again. That brings me to one of my favorite bits of Tesla magic I don't see talked about very often: cloud profiles. It's not just that the car remembers my settings. A lot of cars do that. This is different. When I sat in my wife's car today, it instantly knew it was me. My seat, my mirrors, my steering wheel. Everything slid into my exact settings from my other car, all without having to touch a single button. I just got in. This car already knows how I have everything set up. Because my other car knows. It all just syncs. The wild part is the music and media. Songs and podcasts pick up right from the point you left off in your other vehicle. It's not loud or flashy, it's just seamless. It removes a layer of annoyance you didn't even realize you were putting up with. And that seamlessness is really why we chose the X for this trip anyway. It's the same philosophy applied to family life. Getting our daughter in and out is way easier with the Falcon Wing doors. Even with the rotating car seat, I have still bumped her precious little head from time to time bending down to put her in my car. The X is definitely more toddler in and out friendly. It's all these little thoughtful things that add up. They take the friction out of the experience, which on a 1,200-mile road trip is exactly what you want. For this video, I'm going to put more recording emphasis on the actual road, and not so much in the binnacle display. As the neural networks evolve, the display has so little to do with the actions of the vehicle that I feel a better view of the road, and my commentary on its actions will give a better insight into what's going on. I'm also going to include charging stats, such as miles traveled and time spent charging. After talking to a lot of people about taking our EV on a long road trip, I'm blown away by how many folks still have wild misconceptions on how road trips actually are in an electric vehicle. From the charging time to ability to find chargers, it's shocking how many people didn't know it's even possible to take an EV across the country in any direction. Hopefully they'll stumble across this video, and it will provide useful information to take some of the fears and anxiety away. We left our house at 7:15 p.m. with 47% state of charge and hungry, so our first planned stop to charge and get snacks will be about 40 minutes in. This first part of the trip is actually my original test route. No surprises here that FSD handles it with no issues and no interactions from me whatsoever. In fact, I don't really expect to have any type of interaction until we reach our first toll booth, as in our area, the toll plazas are not all converted to the open road tolling ones, and still have narrow 15-mile-per-hour lanes, with some even having the mechanical arm that raises when payment is accepted. It's crazy to think of the improvements that have happened over the years with full self-driving. I remember making videos about this very route and having to watch for issues merging on the highway. Taking the last exit we were just on too aggressively and running off of the road. I remember it crossing over the line up here to the right and driving on the shoulder for hundreds of feet in order to make a turn, and countless other little issues. I also remember, despite all of those little issues, how impressive and futuristic FSD felt. Gosh, This right turn at the light brings back memories. I remember how excited I was the first time the car didn't try to turn onto the shoulder and make the turn from there. Well, that's enough reminiscing for now. At this point, there are no more test routes. From here on out, this will be our car's first drive on a route I've driven manually for 30 years. It'll also be the first time I'm technically being driven in that same 30 years. If I count this trip as me being a passenger with FSD as the driver, the last time I was being driven to Florida, I was in the back seat with a Game Boy and some activity books. If FSD becomes unsupervised before my youngest grows up, and hanging with mom and dad on vacation isn't cool anymore, I'll have to try to relive those moments with her in the back seat playing Nintendo and drawing in some old-fashioned activity books. I'm using the standard profile for this trip. I usually set my cruise control to 5 or 6 over at the most on the highway, which feels perfect for me, but too slow for a lot of my family. FSD looks like it's going to be making my wife happy by driving a bit faster than that. I'm going to let it do its thing, but at times like this I really wish there was native Waze integration or some other native software option to show potential problems ahead. Approaching the first toll booth, and this will be my first disengagement. I've driven through toll booths like this one on the current version of FSD, and to me, it's not quite there yet where I felt like it's a good idea to let it try to navigate through it on its own. I'll be adding toll booths to my next series of test routes after FSD gets its next update, along with some other not often discussed scenarios to try to up the challenge as FSD improves. The first 30 minutes of the trip have been super smooth as we leave Pennsylvania and head into West Virginia. It's kept a pretty consistent speed, traveling around 10 miles over the speed limit. Occasionally I've seen it go 11 or 12 miles over, but it's only for a moment until it drops back down to 8 to 10 above. I'm currently one of the only cars on the road, so this is how it's actually driving when no other cars are around, and it doesn't have to interact or react to other vehicles. As you can see, there's an object on the right side of the road that looks to be a trash bag. I can feel the car veer toward the center lane in plenty of time to avoid the obstacle, leading me to believe FSD noticed the object well in advance. I'll be traveling throughout the night, so it will be interesting to see how well FSD reacts to dark objects on the road at night when visibility is more limited. As we approach our first supercharger stop, we get our first real interaction with any other vehicles on the road. There still aren't a lot of other vehicles around, so FSD doesn't have any problems with traffic merging in from the right, nor does it have any issues transitioning from the freeway to the on-ramp for the Interstate. The upcoming Interstate on-ramp has remnants of the old lines that are still dark and visible. I've watched a lot of other videos in various locations of FSD having issues with handling things like dark road marks, dark shadows on the roadway, and old sets of painted lines that have been painted over but in a different pattern or slightly different orientation. There are a lot of these dark marks on the roads around where I live, so I'm always a little extra vigilant when I see them on the road, as even though I haven't personally experienced any unexpected behavior around them, it never hurts to be extra cautious. As we take this exit, there are a couple dark lines that run parallel to the actual road markings. FSD doesn't seem to be fazed by them and continues on correctly throughout the exit. The lines cross over and merge into another line that again runs parallel with the actual road lines, but at no time did FSD do anything it wasn't supposed to, transitioning from the off-ramp to on-ramp. This next exit is going to be our first supercharging stop. Had we started the trip with 100% state of charge, we would have not had to stop for another few hours, but we're hungry as well, so it will be pretty good timing. We also made it about 10 minutes into our trip when we had to turn around and head back, because we realized we forgot to grab our life vac. If you haven't heard of it before, the life vac is an awesome little device that you can keep in your home and car that can help if a little one, or anyone in your family for that matter, starts to choke. We like to have them in our cars in general, but for long trips where everyone is eating in the car on long stretches of empty highway, it's been awesome for peace of mind. Getting back to FSD, everything has been pretty easy for it so far, with the exception of the random trash bag on the highway. But since there were no other cars around, that didn't seem much of a challenge for it either. Coming up, however, is an issue I've seen pop up at a few other superchargers in my area. In my mind, I would have thought that supercharger locations would have the most training and map data associated with them for FSD to digest, But based on a few other locations, I'm thinking that this isn't the case, as most of our trip is flawless for hours up until the point of arriving at a supercharger location, which completely blows my mind. The issue which, as you'll see here, that forces a disengagement is that although FSD gets into the correct turning lane, it fails to recognize the "Do Not Enter" sign and wants to make the turn anyway. We haven't been on the road very long, but it still feels nice to get out and stretch our legs and get a quick bite. By the time we used the restroom and ordered our food to go, the car was ready for its next leg of the trip. We spent about 15 minutes charging and added about 31.5 kilowatt hours to the battery. This was about the same amount of time that we would have stopped for in an ICE vehicle. Maybe a little less, as you really can't leave the pump while it fills up with gasoline, like you can leave your car plugged in while you use the restroom and get food. The only difference is in an ICE vehicle you'll generally fill it all the way up, whereas with an EV, it's best to keep it under 80% state of charge. Leaving the supercharger is a much better experience compared to when we arrived. It has no issue navigating and leaving the parking lot correctly. It is cautious, but not overly cautious, around all of the traffic and people at the gas station, and gets us back on our route flawlessly. As we head back toward the interstate, in the interest of time, even though I'll be recording the entire drive, I'll edit out the sections where nothing is really going on, and instead focus on things such as getting on and off the interstate, heavy construction and traffic, any weather events, and anything else of interest that happens along the way. Our next leg of the journey will take us from Morgantown, West Virginia to Sutton, West Virginia. It is approximately 86 miles away and should take us around 1 hour and 22 minutes. It looks like traffic might be picking up a bit, and there's some construction ahead with alterations to the lanes, so it will be interesting to see how FSD handles zipper merging, or if other vehicles are not properly merging, the lack thereof, and how aggressive it is in standard mode, with getting in the lanes it needs to be in to follow its route. It gets in the turn-only lane perfectly, and it looks as if it can see the green right-of-way arrow ahead, as it isn't letting off of the accelerator at all. It's keeping its speed through the right-of-way just as it should. No problems navigating through the on-ramp, and just as we complete the bend and get to the straightaway, it starts picking up speed quickly to prepare to merge with interstate speed traffic. Not a lot of traffic behind us, so the merge itself is easy, but I do notice more dark patches and marks along the road. FSD seems to ignore them, and doesn't make any type of adjustments to the wheel as we go over them at highway speed and continue on. Our first run-in with construction is just ahead. The normal 2 lanes to exit onto I-79 South has been reduced to 1 lane, the far left one. FSD had moved into it a fair bit ahead of time and is now staying put in order to make our exit. It's leaving about 3 car lengths between us and the tractor trailer in front of us to seemingly allow others to merge in. But in this case, it doesn't appear that anyone that is slightly in front of us is heading that direction. There was nothing particularly difficult about the construction here, and I would say lane selection while driving into it would be the only thing that could have presented a challenge for FSD. I'll let the entire stretch play out so anyone who is interested can see how it navigates the narrower lanes with barrels on both sides. Even with multiple sets of painted yellow and white lines, FSD doesn't seem to have any issues staying in the intended set of lines and keeping a good distance from the barrels, and then the cement barriers and guardrails on both sides. Entering the next construction zone right up the road, the first thing I noticed is that there have been quite a few speed limit signs of various types that show the limit being reduced to 55 miles per hour, but FSD doesn't seem to react to them. It has slowed down from its mid-70s speed, but I think that has more to do with FSD adapting to conditions than abiding by the new posted speed limit. It handles the shifting of lanes perfectly, and doesn't feel like it's favoring one side or the other. It's not getting too close to the barrier or the vehicles in the left lane. It seems to be staying perfectly centered. The only issue here is that even though FSD is gradually slowing down, it continues to drive over the posted speed limit. And even though other vehicles are driving faster than we are, it's still not something that should be done. As we approach the next lane shift, It appears as FSD is finally slowing down and getting closer to the 55-mile-per-hour speed limit. I would have liked to see it do this sooner in addition to staying pretty strict to 55, since it's pretty important to abide by the rules when you've got folks working hard out there. Maybe it would have behaved differently when there were actual people around, but in my opinion, if Tesla wants that coast-to-coast drive unsupervised, it needs to be able to follow the addendum signs such as reduce speed when flashing, no turn on red, stop except right turn, one-lane bridge, all signs that it will likely run into in a long road trip. This section of the trip definitely has its fair share of road work, but this time we're running into it as the sun goes down and it is getting darker out. There are a lot of lanes shifting and painted lines trailing off and fading away. In addition to various dark patches on the road, none of which seem to phase FSD, it seems as if we are approaching a little final destination situation. Maybe it's just me, but my mind goes straight to that movie every time I get behind one of these log trucks. I'm definitely feeling better about the choice of speed through this section. Thankfully, it's doing a really good job here of not only keeping its distance from good old Final Destination in front of us, but it's also staying a comfortable distance from anything on the left and right of the vehicle. It's a huge improvement from versions past, where it would usually drive nerve-wrackingly close to construction cones, barrels, and barriers. Even in situations like this where the lane lines fade away, it does a great job of driving where it is supposed to, making it a seamless transition to the end of the construction. It's also getting extra points from me by continuing to keep its distance back from that log truck until the vehicle in the passing lane behind us can overtake. Perhaps all that dojo training also includes some clips from the movie, and it's automatically switching from standard to nope mode. Fast forward a little, and we are preparing for our second Supercharger stop of the trip. This stop is in Sutton, West Virginia, and we have traveled approximately 86.5 miles. According to the navigation, we will be here for a little over 20 minutes, which will get us the energy we need for the next part of the trip, which looks to be about 200 miles. I've been to this area quite a few times over the years. There's a variety of places to eat or just get a quick snack. I do have my Supercharger stops currently set to favor locations with amenities and not set to fastest. I originally thought it would make an interesting video to have two vehicles take the same route, but have one set to fastest and one to most amenities, to see what the difference in time really would be. But as I switch back and forth, the difference in time over the course of 1,000 miles is only around 6 minutes. Part of me wants to try to make the opportunity to test it out in real life, while the other part of me has experienced how accurate Tesla's navigation system for time and distance really is, so it probably would be accurate. So far, FSD has done extraordinarily well with driving this entire way, with the exception of the toll booth and pulling into the Supercharger, which had me in control for about 25 seconds on this nearly 2-hour trip. It has driven the entire time. It'll have a chance to redeem itself here if it can navigate into the Supercharger station, which shouldn't be too difficult since there's no wrong way to enter the parking lot. Nice anticipation there from FSD to get out of the lane that is ending in plenty of time, making that a comfortable merge. Here's the turn for the Supercharger. Turn signal is on, and I can't believe it. It was going to drive right past it. Unbelievable. I really am shocked that the training data here at these chargers isn't more accurate than anywhere else in the world. Well, maybe Chuck's unprotected left might have a little more, but holy cow. When I look back at the video, I can see that it's possible that FSD wanted to make the second right and charge on the other side. I suppose I can see that working, but that's kind of stretching it and making excuses since there are no lines on the other side, and this side is clearly where it was meant to go. I can see non-Tesla vehicles that have their charging port in a place on the vehicle that would cause them to have to block multiple stalls on this side, going to that side to charge, but if I'm being honest, FSD really should not have missed that turn to begin with. As far as charging stats for this stop, we added about 40.5 kilowatt hours to the battery and were stopped for about 23 minutes. It gave us enough time to grab some drinks and snacks and chicken nuggets for the little, and get situated before we depart for the next Supercharger. Interestingly enough, FSD doesn't ever seem to have any issues with navigating away from the station, just getting to it. Our next stop will be about 200 miles away in Mount Airy, North Carolina. It'll be our longest stretch so far on the trip, and much more in line with the stopping schedule in a gasoline vehicle. I don't mind the short 10 to 20 minute stops more often, but my wife much prefers to have longer 3 to 4 hour stretches of driving between stops. There's a little condensation on the windshield as we're driving, but FSD doesn't seem to be fazed by it. I didn't get any messages about camera visibility or any alerts about FSD being degraded. The windshield wipers do end up running for a few wipes, but other than that, there was no indication of challenged visibility from the vehicle. We have the green arrow, and even though the vehicle in the oncoming lane is still moving, FSD confidently and a little cautiously makes the left-hand turn. I don't normally do a lot of highway driving at night, so now that it is dark out, I'll finally get a chance to see the Matrix headlights in action. Another green light, but this time we have no right-of-way left turn arrow. FSD recognizes that and slows down to a stop appropriately, and waits for the oncoming traffic to continue through the intersection before it makes the left-hand turn. As we get on the on-ramp, the vehicle wastes no time getting up to speed to prepare for the upcoming merge onto the interstate. As we merge, I immediately am able to see the dark spot on the road ahead created by the Matrix headlights for the driver ahead of me. It's also pretty cool to see the left side of the roads darken for the drivers in the oncoming lane. After several miles, it becomes clear that this is truly an incredible feature. The only thing is that the ones who get the true advantage of this feature are the other drivers. I am still getting blinded by those whose ultra-bright lights just so happen to hit my eyes the right way, or those who don't turn off their high beams either because they don't think it's hitting right in my eyeballs, or they simply don't care about the other drivers on the road. For the past several miles, I kept thinking how nice it must be for them to not be blinded by my lights as I am being blinded by theirs, and that has me hoping that more cars implement this technology sooner rather than later, as whether it's brighter lights, improperly aimed lights, or an oblivious driver, having the car look out for other drivers is just awesome. I'll try not to gush over the feature for the rest of the night, although it's difficult to not praise it in action, but at the same time curse every automobile brand that isn't making a push for this technology to be in every model when I'm driving along, and a set of ultra-bright lights sear my poor little peepers, while I imagine how wonderful it must be from their point of view. Getting back on subject after my little rant, we are about to enter Summersville, West Virginia. There used to be giant signs boasting about how this little stretch of road was the world's largest speed trap. I don't think that is the case these days, but those signs are burned into my memory like these other drivers' high beams are burned into my retinas. Okay, sorry, last high beam joke, I promise. A quick Google search shows what those signs used to look like since they have long been taken down. Even so, I am still going to be overly cautious at FSD's heavy foot, as it likes to travel quite a bit faster than the speed limit, specifically when that limit is 50 or above. So far, FSD is doing better than I expected, staying 5 or 6 miles per hour over, and while occasionally going up to 10 over, it never really went over that. It also did a great job staying with the flow of traffic when traffic was within that speed threshold, and staying back and letting them pass when traffic was over that. I thought for sure I would have to use the scroll wheel to keep the vehicle in check, but I was pleasantly surprised. This could be due to the fact that there are so many lights and intersections through here, and FSD's preferred speed, that it deemed safe and comfortable for conditions just so happened to coincide with the posted limits. All in all, the drive continues to not only be impressive, but actually pretty relaxing as well. After traveling a little over 40 miles, we run into our first construction zone at night. In addition to the barrels, cones, and barriers, there's a slight lane shift as well. The challenging thing here, not only for FSD but for any driver, is that there is a rather abrupt end to the construction, with nearly zero time to get into the correct lane before being forced off the incorrect exit. I honestly think I would have had to take a second to think about the maneuver, but FSD has no problem signaling and sliding over to the correct lane in order to stay the course. It stinks after such an impressive drive so far to have to disengage for a toll booth, but FSD still doesn't seem to know how to properly handle them, and it is going a bit too fast for me to wait it out to see if it would react properly.
You're running me in circles. I can't figure you out. The feeling of your echoes, and it started with your mouth. Now paint my mind in figures.
We've gone for a very long time with 0 interactions and 0 issues with FSD, so I sped up a part of the trip. I wanted to slow the video down for another particularly notable interaction that I felt was worth showing. Upon reaching some heavy traffic due to construction, there was a section that had clearly painted lines that vehicles were not intended to stay in due to the road work. FSD had no issues with ignoring the painted lines and staying over far enough for not only the cones, but for workers as well. At one point, it even had to move almost entirely onto the shoulder. At no time did I have any interaction with FSD, and it handled this entire event flawlessly. It stayed a comfortable distance from the remaining cones and did not attempt to get back in the lines until the construction was ending, where it proceeded to get back into the correct lanes and continue on with the trip. I have to admit, one of the things I was worried about FSD handling correctly was all of the interstate construction, which even for me can at times be very confusing when driving through a series of changes to the flow of traffic and exits. But FSD continues to impress me with how well it has been handling all of these unknowns. My other concern comes from that lightning you just saw. I would worry about performance in rain during the well-lit hours of the day in an area I'm familiar with and drive every day. It's a little worrisome on how it might handle a torrential downpour on a dark and unfamiliar highway. I'll have a chance to check what the weather is going to be like on the next leg of our trip in a few moments as we are approaching our next supercharger stop. It's been about 3.5 hours, and we have gone just over 200 miles. There isn't anything even remotely confusing at this stop, so it will mark the first supercharger stop that I did not have to disengage FSD to pull into correctly. It's a little bit after 1 in the morning, and my 2 precious passengers are out cold. This is probably for the best, as this stop is scheduled to be a little longer than our usual stops, and the only person who is awake also happens to have the most patience when it comes to charging times. After using the restroom and grabbing some snacks, everyone is still sleeping peacefully, so I'll have to wait to open these fun new snacks I found to share with them later. I don't recall seeing these in stores back home, so they might be brand new, or maybe they are only available down here in North Carolina for the time being. I still have a few minutes to stretch until we are on our way again, so I'll put down the candy bars and take a peek at the forecast for where we are driving through next. Looks like all of that lightning flashing is the most we'll see, as it looks to be dry conditions for the next few stops. This stop was about 37 minutes, and we added 74 kilowatt hours of energy to the battery. Our next stop is about the same distance as the last part of our trip. We'll be heading to Casey, South Carolina, which is about 200 miles and around 3 hours away. Turns out the next 200 miles are a lot of FSD doing a great job on the highway, so I'll fast forward through this as well.
I waited for someone to save. I want to tell you something new. You drove us both into a wall. I drive away into the night, and I contemplate for a while.
A little over 3.5 hours later, we arrive at our next supercharging stop. At this point, FSD has done so well that I'm almost too relaxed, so I think I'll take a little nap while I charge up to 100% and see if I want to continue onward or move out of a charging spot and get a little more shut-eye. Just like the previous stop, there isn't anything here to confuse FSD when pulling into the charger, so it is able to navigate all the way to the charger without any intervention. This is also the first stop that isn't in the same lot as a service station, so it looks like all of the things that are open at this hour are a short walk away. I'm a little too pooped to make that walk, so my plan here is to plug in and see how long it is going to take to charge to 100% and set an alarm for that time. Then, if I'm still not up to it after it goes off, pull into a space that isn't at a charger and take a little longer of a nap if I feel like I need it. Well, I needed it. It took about 52 minutes to charge all the way up to 100%, and that gave us 73 kilowatt hours of energy. I snuck in a few hours of rest, and now I feel completely refreshed and ready to tackle the next 215 miles in 3.5 hours to our next stop. Just like the last 200 miles, the next 215 miles are of FSD, performing flawlessly. There's something to be said about driving 718 miles in over 11 hours, where the vehicle handled all but a half mile of it. Other than the toll booths and 2 corrections at the supercharger, I didn't have what I would consider a critical disengagement at all, and I would say that if I add the few seconds of me disengaging to back into the charging spaces to that, I physically drove the vehicle maybe a minute in the last 11 hours. This has honestly exceeded my expectations of FSD so far. I've been able to sit back and observe while having a great time laughing with my family. This is definitely the best way to do a road trip. I know there's other vehicles out there that handle highway driving with lane assist and other convenience features, but this is on another level entirely. We made a trip to Outer Banks a few years back in our Volvo, and its pilot assist took some of the stress off of highway driving. But tugging the wheel every 5 to 10 seconds, and taking over at complete stops, construction, and exiting the highway really puts into perspective how advanced FSD really has become, and how it feels like it levels up a road trip in a way that is hard to imagine unless you experience it firsthand. This supercharger stop was a little more complex, and I'm actually surprised that FSD didn't have any issues with it. It got us all the way to the chargers, so I only needed to disengage to pick a spot and back in. This location is a lot like the last, where the service stations are a bit of a walk away as the chargers are in the back lot of what looks like a bowling alley and entertainment complex. We won't be here very long, about 20 minutes, so my family has decided to just relax and stretch out at the charger and wait for it to complete, so we can drive over to one of the places to use the restroom and get some snacks. Our total time for this charging session was 23 minutes, and that gave us about 54 kilowatt hours of energy. We took a few extra minutes to run into a nearby convenience store for a potty and snack break before heading out to the next supercharger, which is approximately 160 miles away, and will take about 2.5 hours to get there.
Era inocente como la ves, se volvió madura, la niñez es por un pobre bobo que le fue infiel. Ya no se enamora, cuéntales veces, la leyenda dice que ahora está bien, que es independiente, se lo merece. Me dicen que nada es muy bien, lo que bien mojada con tantos peces. Ella quiere gozar, con el rum me dice pásalo. Ella se quiere olvidar del que la traicionó. Ella quiere janguear, olvidarse de ser.
Surprise, surprise, FSD continues to power through this trip, navigating through off-ramp to on-ramp in quick succession, a very small amount of construction, and a little bit of stop-and-go traffic. Just as we near our next stop, and it seems like we won't run into any challenges at all, the weather map shows that we'll be driving into some serious storms a little later in our trip. Speaking of serious storms, there's the lightning that was at the supercharger earlier, looking pretty sharp.
Ser mala y decente. En la madrugada te encanta cuando el bebé tuyo a ti te canta. En la madrugada te encanta. Eres exótica como Fanta. En la madrugada tú conmigo baby toda la noche. Sé que estás traga. Yo también espero que se note. Yeah, baby, presiento que tú eres lo llamado felicidad. Que hasta la cama la ponemos a temblar. Tus padres hablan, pero no saben.
And just like that, we have arrived at our next charging location. This location is at a Target, whose toy section is our daughter's favorite. This stop will be about 30 minutes, but it'll go by fast since we'll need every one of those minutes for our daughter to hunt for Rainbow Friends toys of every size and shape. 62 kilowatt hours, 30 minutes, 3 Rainbow Friends plushies, and 1 Rainbow Friends mystery box later. We are on our way. All that shopping made the little one hungry, so we'll be taking a slight detour to grab a Happy Meal before heading out on the next section of our trip. After a short detour, we have arrived, and now that we're here, we've got a 6-piece chicken nugget Happy Meal in addition to around 136 miles and about 2 hours ahead of us. But by the looks of those ominous clouds, that's not the only thing ahead of us. That wicked storm system we were looking at on the in-car radar earlier seems to be just ahead, waiting. It doesn't take very long for a few sprinkles to start coming down. Traffic is also getting much heavier, presumably because of the heavy rain ahead causing a slowdown that is now rippling backwards down the interstate. As the rain gradually gets heavier, I'm becoming more prepared for FSD to give up and force disengage and have me take over, but it continues to power through the rain, seemingly unfazed as visibility for me becomes more and more limited. I downloaded these 2 streams from the dashcam during the storm, and even though it is lower resolution and scaled up, the view the camera has is much less obstructed by the rain than I would have thought by looking out the windshield from my point of view as the driver. The fender cameras are particularly impressive to me. Their positioning and ability to control temperature seems to keep them remarkably clear, especially when there's no physical wiper to clear them. Even with heavy water mist spraying up from larger vehicles' tires, they still maintain clarity while driving. We have been driving in the rain for over 30 minutes, and at times my personal visibility was really limited. But to my absolute amazement, FSD never disengaged and forced a takeover, and more impressive than that, it made no perceptible mistakes, or did anything I would have deemed dangerous. It simply drove cautiously and confidently the entire time. As it was driving in heavier rain, one of the ways the vehicle communicated to me that it was not only aware of the inclement weather, but actively responding to it was with a subtle tone and displaying that it was setting its own max speed limit. This is something that you can manually do by using the scroll wheel, but in this case, FSD adjusted its max speed up and down as the rain intensified and slowed down completely on its own. The rain on the windshield has my camera focusing on the interior displays of the vehicle, so I apologize for the blurry video. It drives just as smoothly as it would on a clear day with great visibility. Although there is no visible max speed set in the display, it is driving under the speed limit and seems to be keeping a little more distance from other vehicles than it normally does. Much like the Interstate, FSD is confident and navigates its way to the charger without any hesitation or stutters. This also marks my first time not only using a V4 supercharger, but actually seeing one in real life as well. The rain is still coming down pretty hard, and there's a lot of water accumulating on the ground. This is a very big station considering that every storefront appears to be empty, and there doesn't seem to be any place to go to grab a snack or use the restroom. We were scheduled to charge here for around 20 minutes, and we decided to do just that and arrive with a lower state of charge, rather than wait around and charge longer, since we were so close to our destination. There's a service station not far from here that we'll make a quick stop to for a restroom break and a few snacks. This final stop added almost 48 kilowatt hours of energy to the battery in about 20 minutes. This brings our trip total to 200 minutes, or 3 hours and 20 minutes of time spent charging. If it were possible to drive the entire way and never stop, it would be about 17 hours and 47 minutes. Not counting my little nap, we spent approximately 21 hours on the road and stopped 7 times for an average of around 28.5 minutes a stop. On average, that is about 2.5 hours of driving per 30-minute stop. Comparing that to an internal combustion engine vehicle is a little tricky, but my experience with this trip in the past were usually fewer stops to fill up that also lasted for shorter periods, maybe 3 minutes or so, followed by 10 to 15 minutes to run in and use the restroom and grab snacks, maybe a little longer if that stop had you waiting in line for fast food. If you actually sat down and ate, that usually means getting back in the car and leaving the pump to go a short distance to a restaurant, which would add 30 to 45 minutes to the stop, but you would likely only do that 2 or 3 times on an 18-hour road trip. The biggest difference is that with gasoline, you are filling the tank to full, so you potentially can drive 2 to 3 hours longer than in an EV, which you aren't filling up as much as you are going from under 10% to 60 to 80% each stop, as charging to 100% would end up taking significantly longer, even with fewer stops. Not sure what just happened right there, but the vehicle definitely moved into the left lane across the yellow striped lines, and that's a big no-no. Not sure if that's map data or not, but regardless, FSD definitely should not have done that. It seemed pretty visible to me even with the reflections on the road from the rain, so I doubt it was a vision problem, but either way I should have disengaged since that was super not legal of a maneuver. I'm going to count that as a disengagement, even though I didn't take over because I should have. But as I was saying, I personally don't mind more frequent stops, but I know my wife much prefers to drive 4 to 5 hours and stop for a few minutes and get back on the road. I will say that with a toddler, especially one that is perfecting their potty training, the more frequent stops end up working out very well. This will be our last stop before completing our journey, and after this stop, I'll be back with my final thoughts on the whole experience. Looking back at where this technology was even a couple of years ago, it's hard not to take the experience in 2025 as a monumental leap. This is no longer just a driver assist feature for your commute. It's a legitimate long-haul driving system that fundamentally changes the nature of a road trip. The fatigue, the stress of the highway, it was almost entirely gone. Using FSD made a nearly 1,150-mile trip seem like a fraction of that. In the nearly 19 hours of drive time, my hands were on the wheel for maybe 5 minutes total, and most of that was lower speed maneuvering to back into charging spots. The first 2 stops were a little iffy in terms of FSD trying to take the wrong entrances to the superchargers, and I still felt the need to disengage at toll booths. In addition, there was that illegal maneuver across the yellow stripes before its turn, where I should have disengaged. I would call the first disengagement, where FSD wanted to enter a one-way the wrong way, a critical disengagement. I would call the second one, where it was going to the wrong side of the superchargers, along with the toll booths, both standard disengagements, and I'm on the fence on what to call the boneheaded crossing of the yellow striped lines in the turning lane. On one hand, it would be an easy mistake for a human driver to make. On the other, a computer should really not be making any mistakes along its quest to become a level 5 autonomous vehicle. In my mind, this is insane progress from where we were with FSD just a few short years ago. It's hard to convey how much fatigue FSD takes off of you when you're on such a long trip, but I can definitively say, having made this trip dozens of times, this was the first time since I was a child that I still felt refreshed at the end. And being able to sit back and supervise and not actually do any of the driving takes way less out of you than manually driving. Even when you make a trip with assistive features like cruise control and lane keeping in other vehicles, there's still an element of input involved that FSD just doesn't have. I felt like I was able to connect a little more with my family on the drive, and that led right into us just having a great time while we were there. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I honestly didn't know what to expect from FSD on such a long drive, especially in challenges like construction and heavy rain. Those heavy downpours on the highway can be extraordinarily stressful, but after a few minutes of stellar performance from FSD, I felt much more confident while driving through it. Even though I was laser focused on the road, it was still difficult to see at times, and it really felt like FSD had my back, and that we were both on the lookout for any dangerous situations. I'm looking forward to the next update being able to handle even more edge cases. And who knows, my next trip down might not require a single second of me driving. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Ay, aquí competencia ya no hay, nadie se compara.